down the inside of the Capella Hotel. We are still getting some choppy images from the summit location in Singapore. As we have them, we will be able to deliver that to you. It looks like a room where the two leaders would be signing.
Yes, we see a table and some utensils, I guess, to make the signing with. I guess it's probably a bit too much to expect a joint statement as such. As Kim Jong-un, I'm not sure whether he would be willing to do like a speech, a press briefing as such.
John Kelly, White House Chief of Staff. But we never knew that the leaders of the two Koreas would give out their joint declaration and joint speech right after signing at the Panmunjom, the joint inter-Korean summit village. So it's hard to speculate at this moment, but we could always open that possibility of having the two leaders sign on that document and perhaps address the public.
Of course, because we've not had really any details about what's been happening so far. I mean, Hee-jun, can you basically tell us, over the last few days, we've been waiting for news, but it's been very strange because we've gotten no information, right?
Not on the details, and we only have bits of the negotiations, the three-way talks that were going on in Panmunjom, Washington, and Singapore, and Pyongyang, and the three-way talks. But as of today's meeting, there were closed doors. Only bits of information were released to the press, and I think the press are on their way to the Capella Hotel right now. The rest of the press that were not joined by the summit this morning, so we'll know about the details momentarily, I think.
We are just seeing live video footage of organizers at the summit in Capella Hotel, located on the Sentosa Island of the lower part of the Singapore's mainland, as the two leaders, actually U.S. President Donald Trump, after having teased that the two will sign a document of some sort. We do not know at this point what is on that document and in what way those document would be released, but we are expecting some sort of a calm event that we've seen with other leaders when it comes to signing a declaration, a joint declaration, a communique, so to speak. So what do you think we will be seeing in terms of the format of the joint signing of the document?
It's going to be the standard signing, I believe. I mean, definitely they're very different from the G7 meeting that President Trump has been to. It's going to be calm. So you said calm and pretty straightforward signing. I mean, I would like to see how many pages are they going to sign. I mean, I'm very much interested in the amount of details that two leaders might have agreed this morning. So that's going to be the key, something that I'll be watching out for. But on the other hand, I wouldn't expect any a surprise at the signing event. I mean,
there are some shaky footage that we're coming in. We are going to stick with this footage because we don't want to miss a moment of this another historic moment today. We're seeing pictures of the North Korean bodyguards of Kim Jong-un, making sure the press stay back and keep their space.
Everything's going as planned. But Dr. Ko, I just want to ask you, although we do not know what will be on that document that the two leaders will sign in moments' time, but after today's summit between the two leaders of the U.S. and North Korea, how is this summit going to change the geopolitical landscape within the regional players, so to speak? And that includes South Korea, Japan, China, and Russia.
So regardless of the outcome of this summit, regardless of the amount of details that's going to be contained in the agreement that's going to get signed very, very soon, what's going to happen is that it will be difficult for the United States to go back to the last year's period of maximum pressure. And the idea of dialogue is open out there. It's actually very stable. And even if the outcome of the summit is actually not agreeable to people in Washington or in Seoul, everybody in the international public opinion, even the American public opinion, are going to say the only way we can solve this nuclear crisis is going to be through dialogue. So I think that's going to be the biggest change after the summit. In that sense, regardless of the agreement, I think it's already been a success in that sense. On the other hand, how that's going to affect the dynamics, geopolitical dynamics in the region, that's a little bit hard to say because it depends a lot about the content of the agreement. If the agreement contains very strong commitment by North Korea regarding denuclearization. That would mean the flip side of that is the American commitment to provide security guarantees and even economic assistance to North Korea. That would mean that basically we are going to engage in the multi-year process of negotiation and dialogue, and then this little bit of a reduction of the American security commitment to the Korean Peninsula, and as well as North Korea's increasing level of denuclearization. So that's going to be a controversial trade-off to many people, especially in South Korea, because the security guarantees means that reduction in the American commitment to the South Koreans, and whether the domestic political situation in South Korea will be able to accept that is going to be a different question.
If you're just joining us right now, what you're seeing on the screen is the Capella Hotel, where Kim Jong-un and US President Donald Trump are about to sign a historic declaration of some sort. We don't have the details yet. But Professor, I wanted to ask you as well. Signing a declaration, we've seen it before between the US and North Korea. It's happened many times over many occasions. And signing is not the difficult part, it seems, but actually carrying out the proponents of the deal, doing as the deal, what is said on the agreement.
That's right.
Would you agree? I mean, what needs to be done differently this time that hasn't been seen before?
That's right. So the agreement is going to contain basically issues that the two sides have agreed to jointly take action on, but then the actual implementation side is going to be influenced by what kind of incentives and punishment. I mean, punishment is too strong a word. Penalties are out there for North Korea to abide by the agreement, and implicitly for the United States as well. So those are going to be external to the agreement, and then that's going to be, I mean, the mechanism of that is already in place. We know that there are sanctions, the international community has imposed sanctions in North Korea, and that will remain in place until the United States and the international community can see for themselves what kind of denuclearization steps North Korea has taken. And then thereon, maybe the international community can discuss about lifting the sanctions. So that's the penalty mechanism that's in place for North Korea to abide by the whatever agreement that it's going to reach with the United States. On the incentive side, we know that the President Moon is going to restart economic assistance to North Korea along with Chinese President Xi Jinping in China. So incentives are already out there, but then what's important is that North Korea to take positive step towards denuclearization.
Yes, North Korea did give a statement earlier, says, we've seen footage of him watching the developments of the US-North Korea summit over the last few hours, and he said he too could hardly sleep all night, and he joins all people in ardently aspiring for the success of the summit to bring complete denuclearization and peace to South Korea and usher in a new era among the two Koreas and the United States. Now, he's had a lot to do over these summits, wouldn't you say, as well?
I think we are getting some live information about what the joint signing of the joint document would be. CNN is now reporting that the joint agreement would include some information about the two sides continuing this momentum of talks. Would that be something concrete that a lot of the watchers would be satisfied with, Dr. Ko?
If that's the only possible agreement, that's going to be
that won't be the only one, I'm assuming. But given that the limited amount of information that we're getting, but if that is included in the joint signing process of the two leaders, would that be enough to stop a lot of the fluctuations that we've been seeing between the two sides?
Actually, that's a little bit of an underwhelming kind of agreement because an outcome, I would say, because I think of what the expression is referring to is basically that the U.S., United States, and North Korea are willing to engage in further talks. Maybe that's an indication that there might be a second summit. But then I think if there's not a very concrete and a successful, a surprising concession on the part of North Korea regarding denuclearization, there will be a lot of domestic opposition to the idea of having the second summit, because there will be criticism, especially in Washington, for President Trump to impose stronger terms on North Korea and deliver more concrete results in the second time. So, but then if there's a language such that indicates that there might be a second summit, it could be also an indication that North Korea has made a huge commitment to denuclearization, and the United States are only happy to actually prize North Korea for having done so, and then that could be the second summit, possibly in Washington at the White House.
The stage has been cleared out, indicating that the leaders of both North Korea and the U.S. might be entering the room where they will be signing a joint agreement of some sort. We do not know at this moment as to what information that entails, but we are just patiently waiting for the two leaders to put that onto a paper and agree on it before they say goodbye.
Yes, as soon as we get the details, we will let you know as well. But before that, if we speculate what could be in the agreement, over the past few days, U.S. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo had stressed CVID. He said the U.S. stance hasn't changed. Hee-jun, our reporter, I mean, he kept saying CVID, but what does that entail, and what would that have looked like in an agreement?
So we already know what CVID means. It means complete, verifiable, irreversible denuclearization on North Korea's part. But the document is the best results of today's summit would entail something of a right balance between CVID and what many call CVIG, which is complete, verifiable, and irreversible guarantee of the security of the regime. And that's going to be that's been negotiated for many weeks, and that's what led to the meetings, the past negotiations, to become very lengthy. But also in today's meeting, we don't know the results yet, but as for the timetable and the method of North Korea's denuclearization, that would be something that would need to be included. And I think maybe possibly if today's document, if today's signing, the content does not entail this kind of information, then it may have been delayed to the further summits, maybe in Pyongyang or in Washington or even Mar-a-Lago.
So there had been various levels of discussions, working level talks between North Korea and the U.S. Perhaps one of the most important ones was actually the working level one between Choi Sun-hee and Sung Kim in Panmunjom over 5 rounds, and then 1 round in Singapore.
Right.
They've had many discussions, but then to only have what we're speculating is agreement to hold more talks. That shows how difficult agreeing with between the two sides, North Korea and U.S. is, I guess, wouldn't you say, Professor?
Oh, exactly. I mean, it's widely expected. I think we'll expect to see the mentioning of the CVID, the upcoming agreement. But then on the other hand, what really matters is what kind of complete denuclearization North Korea is going to commit itself to. I mean, there are many steps in many different ways of carrying out CVID. And in this kind of particular case, I don't think North Korea ever denied that it wasn't committed to, they never denied that it was committed to denuclearization. The important point for them was how many steps it required for them to carry out the complete denuclearization, also as the inspection regime. So if the CVID that the United States and North Korea are going to agree at this round of talks is going to be open-ended and have multiple steps, which might prolong the process multiple years, that's going to be a victory for North Korea. But on the other hand, it is a compressed kind of a CVID. It involves very small steps, a small number of steps, maybe 2 or 3. And also there's a very fixed deadline, very clearly outlined penalty measures and incentive measures. Then that's going to be a success for the United States, and it's going to be beyond what the South Koreans and the Americans have expected from North Korea in terms of their commitment to denuclearization.
Something concrete for the U.S. team, perhaps, on the idea of CVID might be that the North Korea is open for an international inspection team to come into their regime and look around to see what they have in terms of nuclear weapons. Would that be enough to satisfy the Trump administration when it comes to having a CVID in check?
Clearly, that's going to be a very positive step. But on the other hand, the challenge with that is that even if North Korea allows a significant number of inspectors into the country to verify North Korea's commitment to denuclearization, actual dismantlement of their nuclear capability, we don't know how much of a nuclear capability there is within North Korea. So what's needed, and what's going to be a huge concession if it's realized, is for North Korea to provide the United States the actually exhaustive list of North Korea's nuclear facilities and the list of North Korean nuclear scientists. And that's going to be a huge success, a huge concession on the part of North Korea, and that really makes North Korea deserve whatever economic assistance that could come their way from our side.
And based on some of the comments that we've seen from North Korean leader Kim Jong-un, would he be more than willing to give that full list to U.S. President Donald Trump for his security?
So again, looking at the status of the U.S.-North Korea relations, we know that up until December 31st, there's I mean, actually even before, like, until February 28th, there's a total lack of trust between the two sides.
Right.
So North Korea is going to argue that, look, neither side trusts each other, and how can I trust you and then give out all our weapons now, which is the only guarantee we have for our survival. So we're going to keep our nuclear capability until the end. So that's actually a really reasonable position on the part of North Korea. And I think President Trump has indicated that he's ready to acknowledge that point and somehow, basically make a compromise when it comes to the, the time frame of denuclearization and the number of steps that it will require. So I think the success in this case is not going to be an absolute success. We shouldn't be looking for the absolute best in this case. But I think if North Korea takes multiple actions in the right direction, in the many different aspects of denuclearization, I think that's going to be we should consider this as a huge success.
So we are waiting for Kim Jong-un and Donald Trump to walk through those two black doors there, in between those US and North Korean flags. Now, one of the interesting things I wanted to ask you, Professor, I mean, with Kim and Trump comes out, we might have to cut you off. But, one of the questions, actually, you talked about, just before January, before February, there was a lack of trust between North Korea and the US. But it also came from the North Korean suddenly deciding to change their stance towards South Korea and the US. The big question still is why they do it. There doesn't seem to be a clear answer yet. But what do you think? So far from what you've seen, why do you think suddenly Kim Jong-un came out on New Year's Day and said, right, we want to change our stance?
Oh, well, it's actually, I thought that the experts here in South Korea officially had provided a very clear answer to that question. But that reason is because many in South Korea have been following North Korean behavior for multiple years, even decades. And we see that there's a cycle to North Korean behavior. And one of the major characteristics of North Korean strategy is the use of strategic brinkmanship. Until President Trump, it was the only North Korea that pretend to be irrational and crazy and also unbearable. But then that was a very typical of North Korean behavior. And when there's a huge level of tension, then North Korea would offer to have dialogue. And that's exactly what happened at the end of 2017. So I think by the end of 2017, I think a lot of experts in South Korea already start making forecast that North Korea would offer to have dialogue with South Korea and the United States in 2018. And we have seen indications of that already happening by September. So in that sense, I think it wasn't completely unexpected for the North Korean behavior in this case. But on the other hand, what's surprising about this is that unlike any previous cases, North Korea's quote-unquote diplomatic initiative has been extremely actually overwhelming in many ways. We didn't see this kind of a speed before. Sure, North Korea had offered to have dialogue with South Korea, but then it would take many months of interval between different events. In this case, we are seeing a very compressed time schedule in a way from the North Korean side. For instance, personally, I'd expected North Korea and South Korea to have inter-Korean summit by the summer of this year, but it has already taken place in April. So this is actually very surprising, the speed. And this is now June, and we already seen the historical US DPLK meeting. So in that sense, I think North Korea has surprised us with the speed of its actions.
Hee-jun, can you give us a little rundown of the timeline of events that's happened over the last few months, last year or so, that sums up basically how suddenly things have changed?
Well, I think in November, the end of last year actually, things were really beginning to speed up after North Korea developed its most powerful nuclear weapon that can reach anywhere in the US mainland. And that triggered the international community to become really alerted, especially the United States. But despite that kind of tension, President Moon decided to invite North Korean athletes and North Korean officials to the Pyeongchang Winter Olympics. I think that was actually the big beginning of the peace kind of developments.
That was also, of course, after Kim Jong-un in his New Year's speech mentioned the Pyeongchang Olympics and that he'd be interested in taking part as well.
Yeah, and that with that event, things started to speed up. President Moon met Kim Jong-un, and in between there were a lot of officials talking and coordinating the meetings as well. And they already met twice, like Dr. Ko said. It's just June yet, and we had 2 inter-Korean summits, and now we're having a North Korea-U.S. summit. So I think I can't really break down like day by day because so many things have been going on as a roller coaster.
Yeah.
Even the summit has been canceled. It's been on and off and on. So it's been a very hectic, year for all of us, I think.
So, Doctor, you've been studying this for a very long time in North Korea, and has there ever been something like this where there's been so many summits and like everything going up and down this much?
Well, we haven't seen this many summits in such a compressed time frame, but we have seen something similar in the year 2000. That was when Kim Jong-un's father, Kim Jong-il, was the leader of North Korea, and actually the signal for somehow the going out party, like getting out of the closet kind of opportunity for Kim Jong-il was the Inter-Korean Summit in 2000 between President Kim Dae-jung of South Korea and Kim Jong-il. After that, Kim Jong-il went out and met with not just like a South Korean leader, but then ended up meeting with the the Prime Minister of Japan, Koizumi, and then actually established the diplomatic relations with many European countries, including France, Germany, and the United Kingdom. So there was like also this pattern of a diplomatic initiative taken by the North Korean regime after changing their the pattern of provocation behavior to one of dialogue. So this is what's going on right now today in Singapore, what we have seen throughout last year is very surprising. We have seen this before, but in a different sort of speed and impact, but at the same time, the pattern is very similar. So that allows us to make a prognosis about what's going to happen after today's U.S. DPRK summit, which is going to be that the whole situation in the Northeast Asia is going to be, at least in our expectation, be stable for the near future at least.
Is there a sense of history repeating? What I mean is, you talked about a cycle. Right now, it's a cycle of friendly relations, but does that mean we'll go back into animosity and insults between Trump and Kim again at some point?
That could happen. That could definitely happen.
Even after the two have agreed on continuing this warmed relations of dialogue.
So as I said, this is a very important moment in the sense that in the near future it will be difficult for the United States and for President Trump to carry out the whole idea of maximum pressure against North Korea. The idea of dialogue is out in the open. It's not going to go anywhere for the time being. But there will be a moment when neither side is going to be too happy about the status quo, and that's going to be the moment when either the United States is not satisfied with the progress made by North Korea in terms of denuclearization, or maybe on the part of North Korea being unhappy about the level of economic assistance and security guarantees provided by the international community. And so that's the danger of the step-by-step approach. Every step there will be a test.
And as we wait for the two leaders of North Korea and the U.S. to come out of that room to sign a joint agreement of some sort, of which we do not know in terms of its content, it is expected to wrap their day-long, a little less than a day-long summit that everybody had been anticipating. And this waiting moment is also being beamed live around the world as the world is waiting to see the two shots that we weren't expecting to see, but it happened today. We've seen their handshakes, their smiles, them, cheering each other and in a respectful manner. And we are expected to see the two leaders come out again. And I think we are getting some of the live line reports coming in that the plane that North Korean leader Kim Jong-un had been on his way to Singapore from North Korea had left Beijing. So in other words, that could indicate that North Korean leader Kim Jong-un may be leaving the Singapore, the island, the city-state sometime in the afternoon. We do not know exact timing and nothing is confirmed at the moment, but we are getting reports that the airplane that the leader Kim was on is heading to Singapore from Beijing. Now, Dr. Ko, I just want to go ahead and ask you again, some of the steps afterwards. What are some of the post-diplomacy that we will see after today's summit between the two leaders?
Well, so what's important is to see the actual agreement. I mean, if the agreement outlines the concrete steps towards denuclearization. And so we can talk about that scenario. If there's concrete agreement about denuclearization, then we're talking about inspection regime and possibly North Koreans dismantling their missile capability and nuclear capability. So there will be an inspection regime being set up. And also that's going to be the inspection, concrete technical denuclearization side. On the inter-Korean side, we are going to see a rapid speed up in the inter-Korean dialogue. And then since there's an agreement, chances that we're going to see the signing of the ceasefire, the end of the war declaration in July 27th, which marks the 65th anniversary of signing of the ceasefire agreement at the end of the Korean War. And also that's going to speed up the South Korea and China's re-engagement of North Korea in terms of economic and trade. So that could be happening right after this summit. So it's going to be a very important milestone in that sense in the inter-Korean relations. But if the agreement that comes out only makes a vague mention of both United States and North Korea willing to work together for the peace and stability and denuclearization, that's going to be considered as a failure, but not by President Trump or Kim Jong-un or in South Korea or China, but especially in Washington. We know in Washington there are many hardliners and old hands in North Korean policy that are very skeptical of today's summit. So their reaction in such an eventuality will be one of criticism, and it's going to be translated to this diplomatic limbo to persist for until the end of the year. So it's going to be very interesting what kind of actions the South Korean President Moon is going to take under that scenario.
What we're seeing now is pictures of the table pen, and it's not the particularly most interesting pictures that we're seeing, but the significance is great. The two leaders will sign could change the history of the two nations. And we are getting also word that there is some rumors that saying Kim will leave Singapore at 8 p.m. today in Singapore time, which is also the same time as Trump was said to be scheduled to leave.
So it makes sense that the two leaders would wrap up their day-long summit in Singapore and head over back to their respective homes, following the summit. Now, Hee-jun, we've been talking this a couple times, and it's only been 4 or 5 hours since we saw the two leaders together, framed together in one shot, having handshakes and all that. But walk us through what the two leaders have been going throughout today.
So in Singapore time 9 a.m. or in Korean time 10 a.m., the two leaders made their historic handshake at the hotel, and that was something that would really go down in history. It's never been, no sitting U.S. president and a North Korean leader has had that moment in the past. And after around 10:15 Korea time, they had their one-on-one meeting with just Kim-Trmp and each of their translators for 45 minutes, and then at 11 a.m. they had the expanded meeting with their closest top advisors. And 12:30 Korea time as well, they had their working lunch where more of their closest aides and officials joined them for this cuisine that both had Western and Korean style food. I think this has something to do with not just the two countries having a balance, but North Korea had been demanding to be equals with the United States for the summit. They've been demanding that they wanted each and every aspect of the summit to, be handled equally with the U.S. And this menu that we see for lunch really reflects that. And if you have a closer look at the course, they had salad, avocado salad, and Korean-style meat and fish as well. So they really had a right balance, even for desserts as well. So
perhaps disappointing though for some people who are expecting burger and fries.
I know, and I also
staple.
expected Pyongyang maybe to come out for the menu.
It was a more serious lunch, I would assume, with the carefully sorted out menu for the two leaders and both sides.
Right, and after that working lunch, they emerged, and now we're waiting for them to come out and sign that document.
How important is this, Doctor, for the image, the visuals? Depending on what comes out of the declaration, it will change. But simply as like a PR stunt, how important is it for both North Korea, for Kim and Trump in America, do you think?
Well, as I said, regardless of the content of or the quality of the agreement that both sides are going to reach, what's going to happen is that this is going to convey a very strong message to everybody that the military option is definitely off the table now, and that we have to. The only way we can solve this crisis is through dialogue. So in that sense, President Moon and then a lot of people in South Korea especially have been aspiring to for a return of stability in the Korean Peninsula. And in that sense, this is the end of a chapter. It might not be the end of the book, but definitely the end of the chapter for us. So in that sense, very positive development. But then how long